This is the editing room of a scholar, a professor of philosophy. His name is Huston Smith. For 6 months, Dr. Smith has been doing research on a special project and recording his findings on film. His purpose has been more than usually serious and profound. He's made an attempt to discover America's own moral answers to 16 of the most basic public and private issues that Americans face. In his search, Dr. Smith has traveled thousands of miles and asked literally hundreds of questions. He's talked with scholars and statesmen, newspaper editors and economists, philosophers and politicians. Tonight, from these priceless film records of that journey, Dr. Smith has drawn together what he believes are America's best answers to another basic problem of our future. Tonight on The Search for America.
I'm Huston Smith. The object of our search tonight is the race problem, the question, what should be the eventual relation between the races in America? Last week I talked with two men about the race problem. Harry Ashmore, Pulitzer Prize-winning editor of the Arkansas Gazette, and Mr. William Simmons, leader of the Mississippi Citizens Council, a movement to preserve segregation. If these men had done nothing else, they had certainly introduced me to the range of the problem. But I had yet to hear the Negro's side. I remember Robert Penn Warren once saying that he had heard a Negro school teacher say to him, "Some white men say that they know Negroes, that they understand them." Well, it's not true. There never was a white man born who knows what a Negro's thinking, what he's feeling. I wanted at least to try. And so, from Jackson, Mississippi, I drove up to Greenville. There I talked to Hodding Carter, who told me about a Negro county agent who had given up a job at twice the salary to come back to Greenville to work. His name was Charles Burton, and he lived in the Negro section of Greenville. It was a curious street with houses that ranged from modest, well-kept homes to broken-down shacks. His next-door neighbor was the owner of one of the larger laundries in Greenville. I was eager to meet Mr. Burton, for he was said to enjoy the confidence of both whites and Negroes in his community, and that seemed to me quite a feat. Mr. Burton, what do you think is the goal towards which America should be trying to move in this matter of race?
America should try to move, in my mind, in the matter of race, so towards a higher standard of living for all its people, better race relations, fuller development of the potentialities of it for everyone.
What about an integrated society? Should this be one of our goals?
No, an integrated society should not be a goal. It should not be the direct objective that we're working towards. If it comes, so good. So fine.
Do you think that Negroes actually want integration? Do you want it? Do your friends want it?
I do not look for or do not want a integrated society. Yet I'm not in position to speak for all the Negroes. But for myself and the friends whom I'm close, we're close together with, and then we talk daily, I know they do not want an integrated society. But we all would like and will enjoy the opportunities to live a full life and for the finer things of life not to be denied to us just because of race or color.
If we turn now from goals to actualities, do you think that the Negro living in the South today has first-class citizenship?
No, I don't think we enjoy first-class citizenship.
I'd like to explore this in a little detail. Does the Negro have full equality before the law?
We doubt that we will have the equal justice will be given to us if there was an offense between a Negro and a white. We doubt that we will get justice in court.
What about economic opportunity?
No, we do not enjoy full job opportunities. There are some jobs that are denied us, and in some of the jobs that we do have, we are not paid the same wage that maybe a white employee would get with the same training and doing the same quality of work. But we have to say, too, that this is improving. It's much better than it has been. And the thing that is important is that progress is being made.
Do you think that a temporary setback is being experienced in this area?
I think that is true. We have lost that good relationship that we of the South enjoy with our white friends. It was a paternal relationship, however, but it was something that we felt it was very dear to us. That relationship, that understanding.
What was it like?
It's hard to define unless one was born in the South. He could hardly appreciate the relationship that existed between the Negro and the white before the Supreme Court decision. For instance, many of the close friends that I had, I can detect just a little bit that he's not quite as friendly, that he doesn't shake hands with me as much. Not that he doesn't like me just as well, but he feels that, I think he feels that his other white friend may seem and think that he's a little bit too friendly toward Negro. Mm-hmm. So that has been lost. Mm-hmm. It's hard to put to just words to say how what it is, but it was something dear to people of the South that people outside didn't know and couldn't appreciate, that relationship that existed between us.
This, I think, brings us to the question of next steps. Everybody's asking about these.
If this question of race relationship will ever be solved, I believe it will be solved by this friendly relationship being regained, and the top, I don't know how you would call it. I don't like to use the word citizen council. I don't like to use that word, but I say that the radical of the NAACP and maybe some of our southern friends that don't understand us too well, because of outside influence, if we may say, those two groups cannot make peace and cannot make progress. I think it would be, the progress will come from the conservative Negro and the conservative white working together on an understanding basis and solve our problem. It cannot be solved by anybody from the outside.
What do you think that the Negro himself should be doing in the current situation?
During this time, I think several things the Negro could be done. First one, I think he just should, this thing that we are accused of while white people don't accept us, I think we should be working on those things, that we can prove that we're just as honest, that we're just as truthful, that we can be just as clean as any group, not only as any white, not just any white, but the very best white. We got to prove that we are worthy of the thing that we'd like to see happen in our group.
Now, what about Negro leadership? What do you think it should be doing today?
I would think the best thing for the Negro leadership to do now is to consolidate his gains and try to find friends among the Southern white by which they could keep the gains that have been made.
Does this mean that they should not be working for any additional advance in the Negro's position?
I definitely think they should be working for advancement in the Negro position, but I think the work should be done among the moderates in both groups. And this is the group, as I foresaid, where the peace and harmony and progress will be made. And that what disturbs me is that the moderate Southern white friends are so quiet. But I can understand why they are, because they don't want to be accused of saying the wrong thing, and they would be accused as they would be sensitive as much with their people as I would be sensitive with my people if I would say something that they didn't like.
Thus far, we've been talking entirely about this country, but you've had a good bit of your time abroad in Rather interesting work, .4 work in Liberia. I'd like to ask you on the basis of your experience abroad, whether you feel that the pattern of race relations in the United States is a handicap to our country internationally.
I had heard that, Dr. Smith, and I thought that a politician or maybe people in the North were just saying it. But I found that it to be true, that what happened in America, they know it across the seas almost as soon as we know it.
Do they have an accurate picture of the situation?
No, they have a distorted picture. They only heard one side of it, and that side is just all the bad things that had happened. When I was there, I spent about half of my time defending the Negro position and the Southern white man position while I was away. Every time one stops to talk with you, he finds out you from America, and he wants to know about the race relationship. And you begin to tell him, and he cites things that had happened that he read about or heard over the radio, and wants you to, how can you justify Mississippi or the United States when these things happen? Well, we try to tell him how isolated those things are, but they definitely affect our foreign policy.
So you spent about 2 years abroad and about half this time actually justifying the United States in this respect.
What is bad, if I may say, maybe you would, that may be on your mind too, that it's pretty difficult to defend a situation. A half lie is hard to defend. It's a part truth in it, and it was part of it was a lie, and they didn't understand. It's just a talk, and they decided they had heard was what was so bad, and it was all. I disliked it so much that we had to defend it.
Mr. Burton, as a man who has spent a good bit of time justifying Mississippi, I'd like to ask you, do you really like it here?
I love it here.
Have you ever been tempted to move to the north? We hear that a great number of Negroes are abandoning the South for the north. Have you ever been tempted in this direction?
No, I haven't.
Well, do you think the Negro actually gets a better deal in the north than he does in the South?
I don't know what you mean by deal. I think the best opportunities for Negro is here in the South. But I like to see all those who want to go, and the more go, the less pressure it leaves in the South on those who want to remain in the South.
There was another Negro I wanted to talk to. As I left Mr. Burton's home, he told me of this man as having a somewhat different and more articulate view than his own. His name was Dr. Benjamin Mays, and he is president of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. My first thought was to go down to Atlanta, but a telegram revealed that Dr. Mays was at the time in St. Louis, preaching the Lenten services at Christ Church Cathedral. So I drove back to St. Louis as rapidly as possible, and at that was able to catch Dr. Mays only a couple of hours before his plane was to depart. But as my home was on the way from his hotel to the airport, he agreed to stop off for an hour's conversation. Dr. Mays, let me begin by asking what you conceive to be the ultimate goal towards which America should be moving in this matter of race.
Well, I'll begin by saying that I take very seriously the federal Constitution, the Christian gospel, and the American dream, equality and justice for all. Now, if that is true, the goal must be complete equality of opportunity to achieve and to develop in every area of American life without the imposition of the artificial barriers of race or color.
Will we ever have this complete equality of opportunity for every individual that you envision until the races are completely integrated in every aspect of life?
I think you are quite right if I understand the implication of your question. There will have to be complete integration before we can have this equality of opportunity to achieve and to develop. That simply means, Mr. Smith, that it will take a little longer than I would like for it to take. And yet, American citizenship is American citizenship. I must look forward to the day when an American citizen of African ancestry will have the same opportunity to achieve and to develop as an American citizen of English ancestry, of French or German.
There are some persons who would say equality, yes, but let's keep the races separate but equal. As I listen to you, why, I get the feeling you think that this is an illusion. There will never be equality as long as there's separation.
Right. As long as there is a separation. In fact, we've never had complete separation anyway, and we don't have it now. And as long as you separate people on the basis of national origin, race, or color, then you're discriminating. And that, of course, is un-American, unconstitutional, un-Christian.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Mays. Do you think that the standards of value among the Negro people as a whole, for whatever reason, are in point of fact lower than those of whites? Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking of things like education or resort to violence, lawlessness, things like this.
Well, I don't quite want to tackle the word value because I think you need to do a lot of defining there. If you mean that that educationally, a group of people that have been denied equality of educational opportunities for 50, 75, 100 or more years, that on the whole, those people would not in every particular measure up with the group that have had these privileges for 75, 100 years. If you mean values in that sense, then I must agree. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I think we must be willing now to pay the price for what we have been doing to these people for 75 or 100 years.
Dr. Mays, what do you foresee in the way of changing racial patterns here in the United States in the near future, shall we say in the next decade?
That's very difficult to say. You see, when you look back and see the changes that have taken place in the last 20 years, and they are tremendous and they are numerous. Looking back for a quarter of a century, I did not believe 25 years ago that the many changes that have taken place would have taken place in 25 years. Predicating my remarks on that, I anticipate other changes in the next 5 or 10 years moving in the same general direction of integrating all American citizens into the totality of American life.
Dr. Mays, do you think that the experience of the North provides a basis for much confidence that desegregation actually leads to integration?
Not much.
Not much.
Not much comfort. You see, you don't have your legalized segregation in the North, but you have plenty segregation by custom, tradition,
you certainly do.
And things of that kind. And your residential segregation is just about the same in the North as it is in the South. And wherever you have your residential segregation, you're not going to have too much integration in the community.
Are we in for violence in this area?
I don't think we are in for any wholesale violence. We've had some, you know,
yes.
Here and there.
No wave of race riots? Or...
I don't expect any wave of race riots. Mm-hmm. I think it's impossible to have a great social revolution such as is going on in America, and particularly in the South right now, without flare-ups of violence here and there. But I don't expect any wholesale violence.
Dr. Mays, you've traveled a good bit abroad. Do you think that the pattern of race relations here in this country actually hurts us internationally?
I think there's no question about that. And I think that every great American statesman who has traveled abroad within the last 20 years will confirm my statement. In 1953, when I was in India, attending the Central Committee meeting of the World Council of Churches in Lucknow, about 9 or 10 Indian newspaper reporters had a conference with me, and they kept me for 90 minutes. And they would not talk about anything else but the racial situation in the United States. And I had difficulty convincing them that we were making some headway in the United States. Fortunately, I was in India in 1937, back again in 1953, and I was able to draw parallels between what was the situation in 1937 and what was the situation in 1953. But they said more than once, it's very difficult for us to take American democracy seriously as long as you have the racial situation as it is in the United States.
Well, do you think that we ought to order our way of life on the basis of what other people think?
Yes, I do. Not wholly, but here you have millions and millions of people between, let us say, the West and Russia, uncommitted. And if our way of life in America, in the racial situation, means that the people in Asia and in the Middle East are going to jump in the lap of Russia because of our racial situation in America, I certainly think we ought to change our ways. And in addition to that, though, I think deeper than that, we don't have to look outside. We have enough in our own Constitution and in our Christian religion and in this American dream of which we boast about. We have enough internally to change our way. Now, when you add that to America's leadership in the world and how many nations depending upon this leadership, it's mighty important that we listen to what the world says.
For 2 weeks I had traveled the South. I had talked to Negroes and whites, to segregationists and integrationists, to so-called moderates and so-called extremists. And what did it add up to? For one thing, I'm sure that it helped me to see the massiveness of this problem. I realized, for example, the extent to which race is tied in with class. As Harry Ashmore pointed out, 90% of the Negroes today are living at the level of slum dwellers. This may not be their fault. I don't think it is. But nevertheless, that's the fact. And quite apart from the matter of race, different classes have always had the most difficult time living together intimately and equally. All this, of course, hits the South much harder than the rest of the country, not only because there are more Negroes there, but because they're less segregated residentially. So change is going to cost us something. In fact, it's going to cost us a great deal. But I think my exploration also gave me a sense of what it's going to cost for us to keep things the way they are. I think, for example, of the fear and intimidation which is widespread through the South today. I think of Mr. Burton's moving statement of the way white moderates are less cordial and friendly today than they've been in the past because of fear of reprisal. And I think of that college in Mississippi, that was under the heaviest attack while we were in the state, simply because it allowed its students under their own auspices to listen to both sides of the race question. There's illusion involved too. When a sizable proportion of our population will tell you that the movement for Negro rights is a communist conspiracy, when they think that if only the NAACP would disappear or the Supreme Court be changed, that this pressure for Negro rights would collapse. When they will tell you that Negroes already have equality in our country and that our race pattern doesn't damage us in the eyes of the Afro-Asian world. When Americans in large numbers not only say but presumably believe these things, there's a dangerous gap between thought and reality. As for the direction in which we would move, in which we should move, I think this is already becoming clear in its main outlines. For one thing, we're certainly going to have to remove the laws requiring segregation. This kind of legal discrimination is contrary to the American faith of the dignity of the individual. Then, too, we're going to have to do what we can to break this vicious correlation between class and race by allowing greater opportunities for Negroes in every area of our life. If we do this, I think it's reasonable to think that as Negroes rise in the class status, that they will integrate and be taken in more completely into our society. But this is going to have to require the decision of many individual Americans, and for the most part, it will defy legislation. And here I think is the most significant thing I learned about the race problem. More than any other public issue, this one will have to depend for its solution on the action of individuals. For unlike the problem of Russia or nuclear weapons, about which individuals can do very little on their own, the Negro problem, the race problem, lives next door, down the street, from every American. As such, it's kind of a barometer. Whether we will live up to what is needed on this problem, I don't know. But if we don't, I suspect that some future historian, looking back, will point to us here on this issue at this time and say, there is where they went wrong. That was the beginning of the long road down.
This is National Educational Television.